welcome to another episode of the Football Analytics Show. My name is Ed Fang, your host, and on this episode, I am thrilled to have Drew Dinsick on the show. He is a quantitative bettor. He's also the co-host of Bet the Edge and the Deep Dive podcasts. I usually have Drew on to ask him about his expertise on the NFL and NBA, but on this episode, we're going to get into the Olympics. Drew, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. And, considering we're in the middle of the summer, I cannot believe how busy I am trying to handicap right now. But that's what we get in every 4 years when the Olympics roll around, and we have 32 sports to handicap and 330 or something like that gold medals to be awarded. So this is a very unique and fun time. And if you're really into the handicapping, the obscure sports the way I like to do it.
Absolutely. And that's definitely why I wanted to pick your brain. I really like the way that you approach this stuff, and I'm very interested to see how quantitative you're going to be about it versus qualitative, because I know, you're going to give us a lot of insights into swimming. Maybe before we get into that, just give us an overview on like Olympic betting, like what markets you like. I know you probably did a lot in 2021. But whether, how that's evolved over the last few cycles since it only happens 4 years ago. What do you think about these markets?
Yeah. So first time I bet the Olympics was 2016. I was doing it all at Bovada because I was like, oh my God, they put up swimming odds? Like, this is crazy. And my first, kind of foray, I was like, I want some historical odds. Like, how accurate are these? Like, is this even a bettable market? And just combing for odds from the 2008, 2012 cycles was really, really, really tough. It was not easy to find any, kind of information on, really how they make markets for anything, let alone the most kind of eyeballed sports, the swimming and the athletics. And so that was kind of an eye-opening experience in 2016, and followed that up, taking it a lot more seriously in 2020. Some of the offshores opened relatively high liquidity pools for really obscure events, and it was like, oh my gosh, like if there's going to be this type of opportunity to get down, then I need to take this more seriously. I mean, you can. For context and reference, like I'm a midweek NFL bettor, so I'm looking for a 5-figure stake on an NFL side, or mid 4-figure stake on a total, and I'm not trying to compete with folks sort of at the end of the cycle who are trying to get down high 5 figures, low 6 figures on NFL sides. And so when you kind of opened up a swimming, or a canoeing, market, and you see that the max pay is 10K on per click, you're just like, wow, this is for real. Like, I need to take this as seriously as I would take an NFL handicap. So that was pretty eye-opening and informative part of the 2021 cycle. And I think I learned a lot, certainly in that time window too. And I know that there are a lot of things that like make Olympic bidding unique. But I think in particular the volume, the fact that there are 330 events that are going to be contested over the balance of 2 weeks is pretty awesome. And as is always the case, it's more like the prop market, because if you're going to open up that many markets, there's no way you can get them all if you're the book. And to make matters even more interesting, like the ones that people have experience handicapping, like basketball, well, that's 2 golds. Like there's 3x3 basketball, so it's technically 4. But mostly you think of basketball, you're just like, well, is Team USA going to win? Okay, well, and you get markets for games and things like that. But that's a super tiny drop in the bucket relative to everything else that's going on. And so you kind of immediately look for, well, what are the highest volume in terms of how many markets are there going to be? You dedicate your efforts there, and then really and truly the kind of the key factor that differentiates Olympics from everything else, as far as what I can tell you, and why it makes it such a fun and useful handicap for a player like me, is there's no Don Best screen, right? Like there's nobody that, that there's efficiency broadly in the marketplace because there are places that will take big bets all over the world. And, one screen can kind of help collapse all of the information into one place so that between the arbors and the steam chasers and everything, like it just gets efficient faster. Well, that's not the case with the Olympic betting. And you have to do a lot more manual labor just to kind of evaluate what's going on across the market. And if you happen to be on, an offshore screen that's taking 10,000 a click in a given market at a given time, where somebody who absolutely knows the right answer is just bang, bang, banging away on a given, market, then the chances of you being able to find that other places and kind of get better prices and just basically being able to be kind of an end boss steam chaser is also part of, fun part of the game. And then, kind of lastly, taking all of the information and coming up with, what you think are fair medal projections and betting into the medal totals for each country is sort of the last and final most fun step, because then you can put capital at work in the same way you would for a futures market at the Euro, right? Where you're betting in before it starts and you have 2 weeks to kind of see it all play out. And that's a lot of fun as well.
Do you think there are quote unquote market making books out there, or is it more of, because like even the pro bettors out there, are they really pro in the Olympics, or is it more of a wide range of people like you and me that like getting into the stuff? We know what we're doing. Um, does that make sense?
Yeah, no,
How
it
do you?
definitely does. And I would guess that basically everyone who is a bona fide, kind of end boss, top level originator in any given sport has some knowledge or skill set to be able to handicap some aspect of the Olympics. And because it is such a monoculture event, I'm guessing that they do. And so,
Right.
yeah, and I know some people who are like fundamentally just absolute sick NBA originator guy who, happens to enjoy cycling also. And the
Mm-hmm.
Olympics are
Yeah.
around, and there are now, now there are 22 cycling gold medal markets to bet into. Like they're going to
Oh
set
my
aside a couple,
goodness.
some of their time in the middle of the summer, and they're going to handicap all those markets, and they're going to find ways to get down on that. And there's one specific offshore that I know will take pretty heavy, the heaviest liquidity per click, and I think most people are playing there. But worldwide, I think the exchanges are probably what would be considered sort of the the fair market price, just because they do so much volume in Europe, and there are a lot of people in Europe who care a lot more about Olympic sports than in the United States, and offshore for sure in the Caribbean. So my guess would be that just in general, the exchanges in Europe would be sort of your go-to, kind of look up for what would constitute fair price. But I think there are 100% there are pros who are U.S. players who are getting down on these games, and they're picking their niches and their spots very carefully.
If you could pick one exchange to go look at for this fair price, what would you recommend?
Probably Betfair. I think they probably do the highest liquidity, and I think most exchanges, are pretty transparent about how much they've matched, and that should drive most of your evaluation there. And
Excellent.
absolutely, on a given exchange, if you click on two different sports like pole vault versus the 100-meter dash in athletics, like you're going to see, several million versus a couple thousand, and that should give you some general indication of what's a good number and what's a soft market still.
You mean in terms of the number of bets on the exchange?
Yeah, just how many dollars have been matched is a great indicator. How liquid is that pool?
So is the pole vault going to be the more liquid, or
No,
the?
no, no.
Sorry,
The
well, I did forget.
men's 100 meters is going to be the most
Oh
bet thing, I
yes,
think. Yeah,
yes.
men's 100 meters is going to be the most bet event of the entire Olympics, would be my guess.
Let me tell you a quick story about men's pole vault. Mondo Duplantis is by far the best in the world. He makes a
Oh,
mockery.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. He makes a mockery out of everyone else. So we'll get into this later. I follow track and field pretty closely. I brought you on the show because I know you used to swim and follow that pretty closely. But anyways, I actually don't really follow the field events much, but I do for the pole vault because Mondo is ridiculous. And like when his competitors are like at their max height, like his hip is like 2 feet over that when he goes over the bar. It's like, like the question is whether Mondo is going to like break a world record at the Olympics or not. For the World Indoor Championships, they DraftKings actually had odds, and they set Mondo at -1,000. So you're looking at like 91% break even probability, and like that's just not high enough, right?
Yeah.
So bet into that, and he almost lost. I think I think he actually had to take a third attempt for like a lower height,
Ooh.
which is always possible. But then he did Mondo things and he won easily.
It looks
And
like he hasn't lost on the world stage since 2019, where he got silver in Doha.
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my
that
gosh.
sounds about right. But like I think like you'd have to look at the margin of victory to really get a
Sometimes he's
true
narrow.
sense, right? Like it's kind of laughable. And so I was really looking forward to, betting some Mondo, but I don't know, FanDuel has it at like -2,400, which is probably about right. Like it's one of those markets where you like legitimately have like you can't set it too high in some sense.
Mm-hmm.
No, I guess you can, because I guess you could go the other way and like, if you're giving out 100 to 1 on the next guy, then you could potentially be exposed there because there is a chance that he couldn't win. But anyways, I think pole vault is super interesting. Unfortunately, there's no value, um, but let's get back to another sport, Drew. Swimming.
Hmm.
I followed a lot of your stuff in the 2020 Olympics that happened in 2021, and you used to swim, and I really loved your analysis of some of the bets in those last Olympics. So maybe give us a sense for how you combined your betting knowledge with your knowledge of swimming, and how you go about handicapping swimming.
Yeah, sure. So my background is I was a swimmer for like 17 years. I swam all the way through college, all 4 years, and I did just in general was never close to Olympic trials cuts, despite being a D1 swimmer. So I have just an enormous amount of respect for anyone who can get to the qualifying stage, let alone the people who get to the Olympics. And it's there are probably kind of three key principles to handicapping Olympic swimming. The first is a lot of the best bets are bets that are lined like they're 80% to happen and they're actually 99%.
Like Mondo.
Like Mono, right. Like if you saw him at -450,
Oh my
right, you would
God.
be like, what the heck? Like this is
Yeah.
a free play, a free square, right? And I think just in general, the bridge jumper type of prices aren't ever really high enough for some events where the chances of something absurd happening are just so low that it's not it's tough to capture it right price wise. And then the other just sort of general thing is there are a lot of events where it's a general sense that there are one or two swimmers who can win, and they're given like 50-50ish type of prices, but some of these events, particularly the shorter events, the 50s and the 100s, the margins are going to come down to your start, your turn, very, very small, aspects. How did you qualify? What lane are you in? Like there are very, very, minor things that are going to determine, the winner of the 50 freestyle or something like that. And there is a rich history of huge prices coming in those events when you don't have, kind of the reigning world champion with a half-second margin in the field. And so I think, taking on some long shots in certain events where there is huge uncertainty, or when where there's not a clear favorite is a fun strategy. And then the opposite of that, where you just have some examples of, hey, this guy has the world record and he has swum the fastest time of anyone in this field by 5 seconds. Like that should basically be a 99.9% type of market. And sometimes you can catch those in the 80s. But that's just sort of the kind of taking what about a given event or a given group of swimmers and coming up with what you think are realistic probabilities. The way you do that is largely a function of taking basically two data points. You care about, actually, I guess I'll say 3 data points. You care about How have these swimmers performed in the last 4-year Olympic cycle? In this case, 3 years. Again, you just basically want to see who has performed the best in a given event over a 3-year period, because sometimes you'll have examples of swimmers who swim a world record personal best at 2022 worlds, 2023 worlds, and then they literally will just put that in the kind of put their peak performance, in a box, in a bag, and just train through the next couple of world cycles, specifically waiting for the Olympics. And so there's plenty of signal there where you can find examples of swimmers who, their best swim might have happened a couple of years ago, but they're sleeping giants and the market doesn't know exactly that they're ready to pop again. And so kind of looking at a broader time scale is important. And then, I tend to lean pretty heavily into in the last, since the last world cycle, what is the who is swimming the best time, and that's more of a recent performance type of indicator where you're getting a sense of, how did you qualify? Are you kind of improving on your time in the last year? And then the third kind of key indicator is mostly qualitative, and it's sort of reading coaches commentary, reading swimmer commentary to get a sense of, okay, well, the performance we saw from them at their qualifying event, was that a tapered performance? The key kind of swimming arc is you put 8 to 12 months into a training cycle, and then you taper for your target meet. And a taper means that if you were swimming 10,000 meters a day in general through the meat of your training cycle, you whittle it down to 3,000 meters so that your body is more well rested, and that all of the kind of gains you've made through your training cycle are there to help kind of propel you to your peak performance. And then you're shaving also. So basically, you're getting every aerodynamic advantage you can for a given meet, and getting a sense of, okay, well, was this swimmer fully shaved and tapered for that performance? And that helps you put context around the performance itself and whether you think it was peak or, if there's still something left in the tank. And that's very much art. And that's sort of the one area where, the market can get a little carried away. And so that is all pre-event. And there is some still, even though the market has gotten much better from what I can tell you, there is still some edge in just being able to take all that data and crunch it down to probability matrix for a given event, and then that, and you're gonna find winning, relatively strong bets, and at least kind of start to fill out a portfolio that way. But then there's an entire second cycle where once the event starts, most of the swimming happens in 3 stages, right? Except for the long distance events. So 400, 800 mile, the short stuff is all done in 3 stages. There's heats. The heats, top 16 qualify for semis. And then the semis are 2 heats of 8, and the top 8 qualify for finals. And in general, you see athletes try to have a progression from performance at heats to semifinals to finals. And in certain cases where you have young athletes, where you have inexperienced athletes, you'll have some swimmers who pop a little bit too hard in the semifinal stage or the heat stage, right? And when they leave these markets up, they can get a little bit carried away with what they're seeing at the earlier stages of the swimming that can create value. So you may have a swimmer who is at their third or second or third Olympic cycle who absolutely knows how to have a top level performance at the let's go with the men's 200 free as an example. There are a couple of swimmers here, particularly the German Lucas Mertens and the Chinese swimmer Zhanlei Pan, who don't have a ton of experience at the Olympic level, who, for whatever reason, might swim the fastest 200 free in heats and then back it up with the fastest 200 free in semifinals, whereas you have a favorite a correct favorite pre competition in David Popovici who has done this enough to where you would expect him to have a clean progression of improvement. And, his seeding, as long as he gets in the final 8, it kind of doesn't really matter where he is. because that's the way the 200, the 200 is not necessarily contested as you're drafting off your neighbor, and you need to have eyes on your competition. And so you could definitely see a situation where a guy who should be like minus 300, minus 350 and Popovici for the 200 come out second, third, fourth qualifier in the heats, second, third, fourth in semifinals, and then the market starts to drift away from him, and you can get an advantage price before he shows up at the finals and just stomps these guys. That's my hope, at least. And so you
Right.
have as long as you have just kind of two key things. You understand why the market is where it is before the meet starts, and then understand why things change at each stage of competition. Then you can kind of sort some of that stuff out. And then last kind of final thought: sometimes you'll get signal early in competition on given swimmers, on given national teams, about whether they're having a good meet or a bad meet, and that will help you inform later events that the market is a little bit slow to adjust. So, like if you see on night one, we're expecting Ariana Titmus of Australia to have a clean kill in the women's 400 free, and if that doesn't happen for whatever reason, if she has an off swim and Canada's Summer McIntosh wins that event, that is probably going to be signal that the Australians overall might have screwed up their taper to the point where that could be sort of a viral signal that you're not going to get peak performance across all of the Australian swimmers, which affects the 100 back for the women, the 200 back for the women, the 50 free for the men. Like it could be kind of helping you understand a little bit better what's going on with the national team. And it certainly is going to help you understand a little better what's going on with a given athlete, because if you're, a swimmer like Titmus who's expected to win the 400 cleanly and you lose, then guess what? Where you have an expected dogfight in the 200 free, you're cooked. Like, yeah, if you're not taking care of business where you're the best, you're going to have trouble hitting your peak in your off events. And so, you could. You could see that, and then the 800 women's 800 free could be open, and that would be a signed auto smash Katie Ledecky. The women's 200 free would be open, and that would be just auto smash Molly O'Callahan, and that's kind of the other and final way to take advantage of information as it comes in.
Excellent. Drew, how quantitative do you get about this, right? Like, are you taking all of, Titmus's and everyone else's results in the 400 free and like cranking out a probability for each? Or are you kind of more eyeballing it?
No. Quantitative is mostly looking at splits as opposed to trying to fit to models for swimming. But the splits are very telling. And most people, I don't know, I'm not sure everybody even knows where to find the splits, and so there may be some hidden edge there.
Awesome.
But I think I have the splits for Titmus 400 free at Aussie trials in both semifinals and finals, and we'll get her semifinal splits and have some understanding or information of where she is relative to her semifinal swims at the Aussie finals.
Yeah.
And there's clear and obvious, straightforward extrapolation you can do there,
Yeah.
which I think is quantitatively sound.
So you make an assessment of the 200 split, right? Because maybe in the last 200 she doesn't need to do anything and she slows down, right?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
kind of
Like
thing.
her strategy for how she is intending to swim the semifinals at Australian qualifying is not going to change a ton between how she's going to swim the semifinals at the Olympics. And so if you are getting a signal of this is how she performed then, and you go by 100 and compare it to how she performs on in Olympic semifinals, that'll tell you if she has like a world record pop or if something's gone wrong.
It's
And
much
I'm
different in
saying
running.
this all because Australia is a hugely important piece of the puzzle for this year's swimming, right? Australia came on strong in 2021 and basically had their best ever Olympic swim meet. And most of it was success on the women's side of things. They were dominated the relays, they dominated the freestyle events. And I think in general, some of that was a long time coming. Like they were notorious chokers in the since they hosted in 2000. Like every other major Olympic swimming event. It felt like the expectations were super high for Australia, and they let down in 04, 08, and 12 and 16. But certainly the 12 and 16 were noteworthy because this Australia is a very far eastern hemisphere country, and you're now competing in the far western hemisphere, and it's that can have an impact if you're off your peak body performance time when you're in the final heat of something. Then that can indicate that can lead to poor performance. And so I'm dying to see how Australia does early in this meet, and whether the expectations, which again are sky high for this team broadly, if that gets realized.
Right. And it sounds like you're looking to fade them potentially if you don't see what you
Well,
expect
based on the
early.
market prices, that's the only choice.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. Is there an Olympics bet you'd be willing to share with us?
Yeah, sure. So the probably the most fun and interesting number that I love right now is the men's 100 backstroke. There's a Greek swimmer who surprised, I guess I shouldn't say surprised the world, but he came on much stronger than people would have expected in the European championships in, I want to say, May or June. His name is Apostolos Christou, and the men's 100 backstroke is very, very fine margins, right? This is literally like probably 4, maybe 5 men have a very realistic chance to win this event. Christou is absolutely one of them. He is an unknown name at the Olympic level, so people don't really expect much. And you can get humongous prices on him. He's got prices like in the 6-1 range when he should be closer to plus 250 by my numbers. So we're crossing our fingers that the Greek backstroker in the 100 backstroke shows up and shocks the world. And this is going against patriotism, because obviously the best backstroker of all time in Ryan Murphy of the United States is in that event. But the margin between those two swimmers in terms of best time swum so far this season is 1/100th of a second, and
Wow.
the price disparity between them is enormous, and that is not compute by my numbers.
FanDuel has Christou at 10-1. Ryan
10
Murphy
to 1.
plus 160.
Oh my gosh.
So you said that Murphy and Christou have like their best time of the year is very close. Do you look at best time, or would you look at average time, or does it depend?
Well, top time is hugely important just because that gives you a sense of ceiling, right? And then digging in beyond that and just making sure that that was not a fluke is part two, right? So, and I put a ton of weight into progression, right? Like I'd like to see that you're getting better and you're not stagnating, you're not plateauing, you haven't taken a step backwards. Those are kind of the key. Those are kind of the key factors. But right now, the 100 backstroke, I thought Ryan Murphy had a very favorable start and performance at trials where he went a 52.22. That was contested on June 17th, and then June 23rd. Christou, in a much weaker field with much less competition, went 52.23. So 1/100 separating those two swimmers at about the same time, and then that actually is the number 2 and number 3 swims in the last calendar cycle. The number 1 swim goes to Jiayu Zhu of China, but that was on September 26th. And so the fact that Zhu of China has not progressed since September 26th, at least in to the degree that we have data from Chinese swimmers, which is very, very hard to get. I think that's generally a little bit concerning that you haven't seen him progress. And so I think this comes down to a 2-man race between Murph and Christou. And if you're going to price them plus 160 and 10-1, that's a pretty easy, obvious call to get involved with the Greek.
Excellent. Drew, I can't let you go without asking you a little bit about the NFL. Do you have any surprising predictions for the upcoming 2024 season?
Yeah, so my kind of favorite macro angle heading into this year is just basically going to be looking to blind bet overs in the first quarter of the season. As you remember, last year there was a huge regression in scoring early on in the season in particular, and I attribute that to a lot of inexperienced quarterback play and just defenses in general being a little bit ahead of offenses. And you saw that wane as we went through the season, and they tweaked the rules a little bit to make scoring and offense a little easier, despite being in the winter months, the cooler months. And now you're adding the kickoff uncertainty into the mix, which to me looks to likely set up better field position on average for offenses. And so I think you've got this perfect storm where scoring expectations are depressed, but you have fewer just question marks at the quarterback position. A lot of the young/bad quarterbacks seem to also be paired with bad defenses. And so I think in general, you're going to see a little bit of a scoring gold rush early in the season. And I'm going to play a ton of overs.
Excellent. I was actually just looking at NFL scoring yesterday, and I feel like the average total was like below 44. I feel like the
came down
average,
super hard.
yeah, and that might not be capturing everything. So that seems low, right?
It was very low, yes.
and
And honestly, the opening to start the season totals were like in the 46 range, and then they came down at least 2 points, maybe 3. And I think expecting that those are going to go back up is kind of where my head is at.
Do you have any kind of quantitative estimate for the kickoff effect?
To me, I think 5 yards of field position, which is sort of a fair baseline, kind of on average, I think should result in something like 1.5 additional points scored per game. But maybe 5 yards is being a little bit aggressive. I don't really know. I'm entirely looking at what is it, USFL for trying to understand exactly how this broke. And for all I know, maybe special teams coaches and just the players that they put on, the players they put on those units are better. But last year's average totals fell from 44 to start the season all the way down to 41.7. They bottomed out, and I think it's coming back.
Awesome. Drew Dinsick, thank you so much for joining me on the Football Analytics Show. Please let everyone know where they can get all your good work.
Oh, sure. So daily stuff for NBC with my co-host Jay Croucher on the Bet the Edge podcast, and then weekly stuff with Andy Molitor. We're into, I think, year 8 of the deep dive, and feels crazy to say that out loud, but we'll be doing weekly stuff and halftime live streams of the NFL primetime games this season. So very excited for NFL to kick off in September.
Awesome. On the deep dive, I mean, you guys used to break down every team, right? Like there would be...
We are 10 teams in, 10 out of 32 in the book so far this season. We're giving every team a full hour. We're going through how we are power rating every unit, combining them into kind of a clean, transparent expected percentile for offense, defense, and then what our power number against a neutral team would be for that team. It's been fun so far, and it's more quantitative than we're usually doing, which has been an enjoyable pivot.
Awesome. Please go check that out at the Deep Dive podcast. Drew, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks again for having me, and enjoy the Olympics.
I certainly will. My name is Ed Fang, your host for the Football Analytics Show. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I will be back again next week for another conversation. Talk to you then.